Pasi le beloko mpimo mbebeta nkakanga donc mbloka comme rien bon to faut les zéro to faut ça un peu rien to yala ko mpita mais pas mais to faut être pas rien ko mpita déjà il y a les payants comme moi jamais le couteau caille donc au coup si tu allais prison mais quand même jour au volet donc aucun n'a pas sur ce qu'on a au coup sur même là jour.
The feared whip was called a chicotte and made from dried hippo hide. But an even more brutal punishment was common. Some of those who didn't collect enough rubber had their hands cut off. Up to 10 million people died under the regime of King Leopold II. And early photographs of atrocities led to the world's first international human rights campaign. It hastened the end of King Leopold's rule, but his personal colony, which had made him rich, was handed over to Belgium in 1908. The Congolese were handed a place rich with natural resources, but without the knowledge and training. He arrested Patrice Lumumba, the country's first prime minister, who had turned to the Soviet Union after being shunned by the West. With the Cold War backing of Belgium and the CIA, Mobutu handed Lumumba to the rebels to be killed. His body was cut up and dissolved in acid.
He is normally reclusive and camera-shy. It builds his mystique. The scale and pomp of this highly visible ceremony are designed to bolster his fast diminishing authority. It is also an unwitting acknowledgement that he knows he's in trouble.
Mobutu transformed himself into a classic
Is that bien? Is that bien? Is that bien? Abonnez. Mouvement TV. Bing Shing. Is that bien?
État de droit et biso sous namboka na biso Congo. État de droit, justice lève les nations. État de droit, ndetanzela état de droit, ndetolongi. État de droit, état de droit.
Abonnez. From Mouvement TV. Bing Shing. Is that bien? Is that bien? Is that bien?
Mouvement TV, Big Shing, Masolo, Olingolingate, Mouvement, Big Shing TV, Masolo, la solo politique, Ndoulé, comédie traditionnelle, tu vois, tout et tout. Donc, Bongo Bolanga, chaîne Binobo support, chaîne Binobo toujours que les bossos. Et puis la Bing Shing, Manoka Moïse Azosana Kata Sata Mouton TV, Douda Moga Moga Tokutana na Kinshasa, Yebela, Douda Moga Moga Tokutana na Londres, Yebela, Sabone, Nasote Mouton TV, Europe, Africa, Monassi, Nasote Mouton TV, Sote Mouton, Nasaranyoso, Sote Mouton TV.
Rivers flows from the heart of Africa. It cuts through the largest rainforest outside the Amazon, with wildlife found nowhere else on Earth. It's amazing. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is a vast, beautiful but tormented place.
Tango ilitaka Bangkok bakiso barena pasi le beloko mpimo mbebeta.
This country is rich, but its people are among the world's poorest. For centuries, its resources have been plundered and it's been ravaged by war.
From here you cannot find anybody. They start going, all of them. They will disappear here soon.
The violence goes on, and now it's plagued by Ebola. But some change is coming for this country the size of Western Europe. With elections finally on the horizon, we're setting off on a long and challenging expedition to follow the Congo into the heart of Africa. From the Atlantic Ocean to the heart of the continent, the Congo has always been a place of fear and mystery. The mouth of the river is lined with ancient mangrove swamps. It's an eerie and mysterious start to an epic adventure.
Well, this is the point where the Congo River and the Atlantic Ocean meet. Next step is Brazil. It was 1482 when the Portuguese were sailing past this coast and they noticed this surge of brown water and realized there must be a river here. That was the Congo, and this is the direction they took. For 3,000 miles, we're going to take you up this great river to try and understand its history, its riches, its poverty, and its future.
From the Atlantic Ocean, we'll follow the river to its furthest reaches, navigating round its powerful rapids and through its chaotic capital city, Kinshasa, as it arcs up north and then south, twice crossing the equator. We'll visit its war-torn east, venture into Ebola territory, meet rare gorillas, and find out just how rich this country could be. As they sailed up this first stretch of river, the Portuguese must have dreamed of the great riches that lay ahead. They found a well-organized society, the Kingdom of the Congo, open to their offers of trade. But less than 100 kilometers inland, they hit an obstacle that it would take so impassable by boat. And so this port, Boma, became a European center of trade. Guns and goods came in, ivory and slaves went out. These odd monuments in the town reflect that past. It's not a great likeness, but that's Henry Morton Stanley, the first European to travel the Congo from its source to the sea. Stanley was a Welshman who took 999 days to travel here from the eastern coast of Africa. It was an epic journey and opened up the interior of Africa for exploitation.
Le voyage de Stanley avait un but. Le but, comme je vous ai dit, pour le roi Léopold II, c'était à découvrir le Congo parce que quand il avait traversé le pays, qu'il est allé dire aux Anglais, comme je vous ai dit, que j'ai découvert une partie de la terre qui a trop de richesses, mais ce n'est pas colonisé. Si les Anglais avaient accepté, les Anglais, nous, on allait être colonisés par les Anglais. Mais après tout, on lui a demandé d'aller voir le roi Léopold II qui avait des possibilités, et celui-là s'est intéressé du Congo.
The Belgian king was looking for his own colony. The men met, and the Congo Free State was born. Boma was its capital. This was once the Governor-General's residence, but it's not a time in history that's remembered fondly. The powerful rapids that had been the obstacle for so long remain impassable today. But they've also provided great opportunity for hydroelectric power.
There are a few places on the planet where rivers run as fast and as hard as the Congo does here as it approaches the sea. A hydroelectric power station built here could provide electricity for the whole of Africa. It would produce twice as much power as any other hydro plant on Earth. That is how rich the Congo could be if the resources were put to good use.
They built 2 small power stations decades ago here at Inga, but there's always been a much more ambitious plan for a grand Inga dam to be built across this whole valley. A deal has recently been signed to make that happen.
Ce projet va permettre l'essor économique de toute l'Afrique parce que pour le moment, ce que l'Afrique a besoin, une source qui est sûre, une source qui est fiable parce que l'énergie hydroélectrique, c'est une énergie propre et renouvelable. Et nous l'avons sur le site d'Inga en permanence et en quantité.
But promises have been made before, and nothing has happened. the story of the Congo is often the story of lost or squandered opportunity. To get around the rapids means we need another form of transport. The railway was built under the orders of Henry Morton Stanley in the 1890s to replace a long and arduous trek. Around that time, Joseph Conrad walked the route to become a steamboat captain upriver. His diary became The Heart of Darkness, a novel whose title created a stereotype that still haunts the DRC today. The trains only run once a week after being derelict for years. It's an opportunity for the villagers along the way to sell as much as they can in a 5-minute mobile market. Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's crazy, chaotic capital. Joseph Kabila has been president since 2001. Kinshasa is one of Africa's biggest and fastest growing cities. It's big and brash and bossy. There's a strange but colourful subculture that's grown out of Kinshasa and across Africa. The sapeurs, who put their confidence on display.
Comme on a eu la princesse, naza sapeur mazala na Congo, un défi la canal part de la SAP.
Princess is getting ready for a night out. The French acronym SAP, SAPE, stands for the Society of Ambience Makers and Elegant People, and she certainly fits the bill.
Vous comprenez? Notamment, je suis en train pour les lambas donc na kotambula nanga na fai nanga bona zana mino normal. Mais sur national là déjà Japon et mon national déjà tidia au senti pena que donc tam sur là ti mapa on nzoto langa. But muso ba osumba mituka, amso osumba mapa on minga na ozo mbongo osumba lipa on osumba on lamba. Na on pesa une idéologie fona zana on fier. Comprendre?
SAP goes back to the 1920s, but it was the 60s, after independence, when it came into its own. When the musician Papa Wemba championed an extravagant dress code in direct opposition to the country's leader. President Mobutu decreed Western attire a symbol of colonialism, and it was forbidden. Today, thousands of Congolese sapeurs like Princess celebrate the art of dressing well. From here in Kinshasa, the rapids end and boats can travel the river again. And so begins our long arc up to the equator and to Bandaka to explore life on the river at the first major port. In a vast country with so few roads, this is the Congo superhighway. This is how people get around a country the size of Western Europe with very little infrastructure connecting it. When there's a huge river, they go by barge. These go all the way from Kinshasa right through to Kisangani, hundreds of miles with many, many stops along the way. And they're like small villages. People eat here, sleep here, they brave the elements and the mosquitoes here as well. And there used to be many, many more of these decades ago. The journey this far has already taken 2 weeks, and there's at least another week to go. They've been delayed here days by a dispute over unpaid duty on some of the cargo. Bureaucracy and the corruption that comes with it is a blight across the DRC. As long as you've got money, everything's fine.
Et c'est ça qui est la base.
This man's a big fan of travelling by barge. Just like a big family, he says. But as a retired soldier, he's in no rush. Karine Linguli just wants the journey to end. Her husband recently died. She's disabled and has run out of money to buy food for her kids on the boat. She's heading for a new start, with a Bible by her side. During the Belgian colonial times, this river really was a highway. Among the traffic were luxury steamboats. The remains now lie rusting along the banks. The workshop's quiet. In many ways, the Congo has gone back in time. It takes just 4 or 5 hours driving through the forest to meet people living a very traditional way of life. This is Boyanga village. This pygmy ritual is to wish them good fortune, hunting in the forest. And we are going with them. They're looking for wildlife and useful plants along the way. They block animal holes and use smoke to force them out. It's the way they've always hunted. But a century ago, King Leopold discovered there was something in the forest worth a huge amount of money. Rubber. This white sap from the wild rubber vines could be collected and made into tyres for bicycles and then cars. But before rubber plantations industrialised the process, this was the only source, deep in the forest, and so the pygmies were made to collect it.
Ntango ilitaka Bangkok bakiso balena mpasi le beloko mpimo mbebeta nkakanga donc mbloka nkomo epenya bon tofo le zéro tofo ça un peu rien to yala nko mpipita bepa bitobo ate bepa yanko mpipita déjà il y a le penya nkomo jamais. Le couteau caille, donc au coup si t'as les prisons, mais quand même joue au volet, donc aucun n'a pas sur coup qu'on a au coup souvent même l'anjo.
The feared whip was called a chikot and made from dried hippo hide. But an even more brutal punishment was common. Some of those who didn't collect enough rubber had their hands cut off. Up to 10 million people died under the regime of King Leopold II. And early photographs of atrocities led to the world's first international human rights campaign. It hastened the end of King Leopold's rule, but his personal colony, which had made him rich, was handed over to Belgium in 1908, only for exploitation and brutality to continue. It was the Belgian Congo until 1960, even though there was little free about it for the Congolese. With independence came retribution and a great white flight from the country. Many Belgians left. The Congolese were handed a place rich with natural resources, but without the knowledge and training to use them. Such was the colonial style that few people were qualified doctors, academics, or tested leaders. The country was cast adrift. The rainforest is perhaps the Congo's most precious asset. The largest outside the Amazon and a valuable sink for the carbon dioxide that's warming our planet. But demand for charcoal means it's going up in smoke. A solution to that is being explored in a nature reserve on a remote bank of the Congo River. Yangambi was the world's largest tropical forest research station. Hundreds of expats and their families lived and studied here until they left. After independence, Mobutu became the army chief of staff. He arrested Patrice Lumumba, the country's first prime minister, who had turned to the Soviet Union after being shunned by the West. With the Cold War backing of Belgium and the CIA, Mobutu handed Lumumba to the rebels to be killed. His body was cut up and dissolved in acid.
He is normally reclusive and camera-shy. It builds his mystique. The scale and pomp of this highly visible ceremony are designed to bolster his fast diminishing authority. It is also an unwitting acknowledgement that he knows he's in trouble.
Mobutu transformed himself into a classic African dictator after becoming president in the 1965 coup. Political opponents and rivals were killed or tortured. His regime was totalitarian and corrupt. He got rich while the country got poor.
What was he like as a person?
A generous person. I tell you the truth, it's not only because it's my family, no. He liked all the children. He liked his family.
He's been alleged to have been a terrible president, brutal.
Oh, brutal? I don't think so. If you're brutal, you have to start it with your family. He never bites one of China, no, never.
But it all came crashing down in 1997. An invasion and a coup forced Mobutu out, and he died in exile. It's when the looting here began, and when time stopped in Badalite.
This international airport was built in the middle of a jungle. It was a vanity project. That was a plush VIP reception area. This, a huge terminal. Concorde landed here, bringing in luxury goods like pink champagne, but then President Mobutu. Today, it's just a show.
The money just dried up. This distant town on the edge of the country owed its privileged position to one man, and he'd gone. A while ago, the town's hydroelectric power station broke down. It takes 3 months for generator fuel to come upriver from Kinshasa, and then another 10 days or so for a tanker to negotiate a flood-damaged dirt road. The lights are off in Badalite. But we have to get back onto the river and head upstream, past Yangambi and on to Kisangani, the end of the line for river traffic, where rapids block the way, but once again provide an opportunity. Leaches out different metals. It burns your nose and throat. Electrolysis transforms the liquid into sheets of copper, as the cobalt heads elsewhere to be dried and packed.
So this is the final product. This is 35% cobalt. It will be refined further, but this is what they export from here. You can see the green colour. This is basically what goes into your electric car battery. Stops it from catching fire. This has doubled in price in the last couple of years. That's how much in demand it is.
Wealth like this should transform a country, but the exploitation continues by big businesses and for personal gain.
We have a lot of resources, and these resources have been our malediction. But at the same moment, these resources, if we can really manage them very well and stop people to be there just to loot without transforming at least partially. Here, we can make it.
Is it corruption that's eaten away at the wealth of this country?
Yes, corruption is one of challenges among which we have to deal with. And the corruption also is a bad habit we have inherited when we got independence. The bad habits have to be fought, and it is one of our main program. We can't say that we have won, but still we are trying really to finish it, because we can't maintain more people. This can't be accepted at all.
As the country votes in long-delayed elections, the hope for change and an end to corruption are on the ballot. But there's fear the process won't be free or fair. Controversial electronic voting machines are being used, and some opposition leaders have been barred from standing. For a long time now, a strong voice of opposition has come from the pews of the Catholic Church, as peaceful protests have been met with violence. Many critics have been forced underground, which is why we had to secretly meet a couple of young activists from a group called Lucha, or Struggle for Change.
Le 3 septembre, j'avais été torturé.
Ghislain Mahiwa was jailed for 6 months for leading illegal protests. He says he was recently beaten so badly, he spent 3 days in hospital.
Nous sommes aujourd'hui en train de nous battre d'abord pour qu'il y ait une alternance démocratique au Congo et qui doit passer par de bonnes élections, des élections où il n'y a pas d'exclusion, des élections où il y a la sécurité, mais des élections avec un fichier fiable, parce que le fichier que nous avons aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas un fichier fiable. Il y a 16% des électeurs fictifs.
They arrived separately, they were nervous, and we had to do the interview quickly. It's dangerous here to speak as openly as this.
Et nous exigeons la paix en RDC, partout dans nos villes, dans nos communes, dans nos périphéries, dans nos villages, parce que ce que nous voyons aujourd'hui, à cause de la guerre, il y a des femmes qui sont violées chaque jour. Nous enregistrons de femmes qui sont violées. Il y a les enfants qui sont enrôlés dans des groupes armés.
With Joseph Kabila not taking part, there is going to be a change in leadership. The majority hope it will be for the better, that the huge potential of the Congo will finally be realized. This journey up the Congo River has shown us just how beautiful and how huge a country this is. How rich it is in so many ways. History has been cruel to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, exploited by the early European explorers, by Belgium and its cruel king, and then through the last 6 decades of greedy Congolese leadership and war. But stereotypical image. If you'd like to take
Sote mouton, émission ya bien, ezala karaboye. Bigeshi, sote mouton, émission ya bien, ezala karaboye. Soki nakozwa information na kolanda, sote mouton, bigeshinge. Moneta, mwana kalakuta Bigeshi, sote mouton, émission ya bien, ezala karaboye. Soki alinge otala, évolution ya mboka, tala sote mouton, bakomite ya mboka, mboka. Bigeshi, sote mouton, émission ya bien, ezala karaboye.